50 years ago, the war on poverty was coined by Lyndon Johnson. And since that time, there have been generations of Americans who have fought in that war. You've heard from her with other social scientists. They rise above the fray to analyze and, for the rest of us, show us the movements of the enemy that is poverty. Then there are the foot soldiers. And I guess in this analogy, that is Unite Indy. We're the boots on the ground, working strategically by uniting businesses, government, churches, volunteers, and other not-for-profits to fight this shared battle. Unite Indy's approach is to provide the one-on-one care and strategic assistance that we believe Christ would give. In general, we're a lot less about handouts and a lot more about providing a handout. Some of our first efforts were to bring fresh insights into our public square. We have two publications inserted into the Indianapolis Business Journal and the Indianapolis Reporter, which is the oldest black newspaper in the country. The first one was called Building Race Relationships, which obviously explored issues of race in our city. The second was Indy's Urban Employment Crisis, and that one shocked some people. The average unemployment figure for the U.S. at the time was historically low. It was 3.9%. But what most people did not know and learned from our publication was that in the urban core, the unemployment figure stood at 21%. In fact, across the country, whatever the unemployment rate is, you'll find that poor urban areas have an unemployment rate 3 to 8 times higher, and that's in good economic times and in bad. Why is that? Well, in a black urban neighborhood, we can automatically say there were fewer job opportunities that go back generations. But there are plenty of poor white areas too. After doing this for 5 years in Marion and surrounding counties, one issue became pretty obvious to us. It was that one thing that seemed to always be there in the history of the person we were working with. The statistics point to it too, and that is the overwhelming common thread we see. It is the lack of a father in the home. It contributes greatly to an increase in poverty, an increase in crime, and finally to an increase in incarceration. One example, one study found that individuals from father-absent homes are 279% more likely to carry guns and deal drugs than peers who live with their fathers. A study in 2011 found that children living in female-headed homes with no spouse had a poverty rate of 47.6%, over 4 times the rate for children living in homes with 2 parents. Another study, the most damning, I think, shows that 75% of juveniles in prison say they had no father figure in the home. The issue is less about single moms than you might think. These examples, more than anything, reflect the declining perceived value of fathers in our society. The 60s war on poverty began to pay mothers according to how many children they had. Social workers in the 70s literally visited those receiving child support payments to verify the absence of a male presence, searching bathrooms for razors and closets for men's clothing. What was an effort to help poor mothers became a powerful force to crack the foundation of marriage in poor minority neighborhoods, where these programs were widely used. The percentage of marriages in all races has decreased since the 50s, but in urban communities the result was devastating. In the 50s, black and white people married at about the same rate, about 90%. By the late 60s, black marriages had dropped to 50%, and by 2010 they hit a new low of 27%. According to our society's groupthink today, fathers in general, and black fathers in particular, have never been more irrelevant. Today, generations of children have grown up, repeated the single-parent pattern, and have given birth to the term generational poverty. In our opinion, generational poverty has created the poverty-to-prison pipeline. Here's a real-life example. A few years ago, I began writing to an inmate named Jesse, who was in prison in Greencastle, Indiana. Jesse was 5 when he witnessed his alcoholic mother being beaten with a hammer by her latest boyfriend. He and his siblings, who all had different fathers, were shuttled off to foster care, where he remained until he was pushed out of the system at age 18. He never saw anyone go to work every day. He never had anyone promote education, responsibility, integrity, or even much kindness. He served 22 years in prison for various illegal acts and is now free. But he still struggles to make good decisions around basic issues that you and I learn to handle just by watching our parents. Think about it. How many of you grew up near a rural area where there were farms? I did. My friends growing up on a farm were driving huge tractors as soon as their legs were long enough to reach the clutch. No one even gave them lessons. They had been riding on their father's knee around the farm since they were 2. It was just part of their map. They all went to church together, another map. They worked on the farm. They respected their parents. We all have unique maps that inform our lives for the rest of our lives, whether they're good or bad. According to early childhood studies, by the time we're 5 years old, we have learned the most important lessons we will need to negotiate and maintain a happy life. And we learned those from our parents. But for many, that homeschool house just did not exist. So how do we at Unite Indy work to put some of these important maps into the lives of reentrants who may not have ever received that kind of education, but also have prison culture imprinted in their souls? The first step, the most important step, is to show them that we really care about them. We are kind. We show them that we respect them and their journeys and help them get settled with housing, food, clothing, connection to a drug abatement program, whatever it is they need. And then we get down to work and we train them. And that training is loving as well. We provide a map most of them have never seen before. In many ways, it's like giving a lost driver a Google Map app. All of a sudden, they know what direction they should go. So our Google Map app is Jobs for Life. Jobs for Life is an internationally recognized, biblically based course that teaches that our Creator made us to work, that work is a good thing as it stresses the importance of character, integrity, and honesty. We give each student a mentor who stays with them through the course, and then we teach them to write a resume, to get a job, how to get a job, and to be completely honest about their criminal history. We teach what an employer will expect and why, and how to advance in a company, and a lot more. The Bible says if one does not work, he will not eat. And I have to be completely honest with you here. I thought my father came up with that. But actually it was Paul who said it, and I learned he was right. One issue, though, that continued to come up was that taking this course involved a lot of reading. And that was a stumbling block for a lot of people we were working with. So with the help of the Criminal Justice Department at Indiana Wesleyan University, the lessons have been animated. It's still a serious learning opportunity, but now the whole 10-week course is easier to digest and more accessible to a much broader audience. The path to success was getting smoother, but the problem remained that too many companies were still unwilling to hire those with a criminal record. Reentrants might knock on 100 doors, maybe find someone who would hire them for $8 an hour to sweep a floor. That is not a living wage, and jobs like that have fueled recidivism for decades. So in 2019, Unite Indy began working to develop a network of employers here who were willing to hire those with a criminal record. With that portfolio of jobs, we built a website called secondchanceindy.com. Now there's no more going door to door to have them slammed in your face. These jobs pay a living wage. We're talking $18, $19, $20 an hour and more. And these employers understand and work around court-mandated things like drug tests or the need to meet a parole officer during the day. The program of training, mentorship, and job acquisition was really working, but more jobs were needed because every year, just consider this, in Marion County alone, and we work in the 9-county area, in Marion County alone we have 12,000 people being released every year, from incarceration. Anecdotally, people were saying that these reentrants made great employees. In fact, better than some employees with no criminal record. We knew if we could get proof, we could sign on more employer partners and get more jobs for reentrants. So we asked Butler University's Lacey School of Business to see if the anecdotal evidence could be proven. In a groundbreaking study, Over a year and a half, researchers combed employment records and interviewed human resource executives. And here's what they said. There is no statistical evidence, there's no statistical difference between the on-the-job performance of a person with a criminal record and one without. And surprisingly, this is great. They found that the more serious the offense, say a felony versus a misdemeanor, the more serious the offense, the better the employee. Armed with this study, we've been able to expand our employer partner base on secondchanceindy.com to more than 40 employers today. Reentrants now get training, mentor support, and job availability. What else could they possibly need? Well, they needed help with the #1 barrier to getting and keeping a good job, the lack of dependable transportation. So over the past 2.5 years, we've been testing and now running a transportation program that uses 16 vans that seat 15 passengers each to take employees to and from work 5 days a week to employers all over central Indiana. And that program will soon be expanded. And because of this dependable transportation, our reentrant employees have a lower no-call, no-show record than employees without a criminal record. That is a big deal. In other words, they are the most dependable employees these companies have. Both the City of Indianapolis and the State of Indiana are helping to support that program because it reduces recidivism, it cuts taxes for taxpayers, and most importantly, it supports an increase in income and a reduction in the poverty situation for reentrants and their families. Here's the bottom line. We spend over $500 million just for state prisons in Indiana every year. That's $1 billion with a B. And that doesn't even include county jails. And in Marion County, for example, within 3 years of release, statistically 46% will be reincarcerated. But for those who are employed soon after release, studies show we can drive down recidivism by as much as 90%. So take that 46%, change it to 4.6%. That is a huge difference. What we've learned is that by training and employing those who are released from incarceration, over time, we can change the face of recidivism and even poverty in central Indiana. This is what good jobs, good pay, and a connected team of caring people can accomplish. We are effective because we have united our efforts with businesses, churches, volunteers, universities, and other nonprofits to attack this very big, very complex social issue. Through education and connection, Unite Indy empowers reentrants to find self-respect, dignity, and restoration every day through the virtue of work. Thank you.